I have a PhD in philosophy and used to teach college courses on Marxism, and I just failed a quiz in an online class on Marxism, Socialism, and Communism at Hillsdale College. So either I've gotten dumber, or this course is pedagogically designed not to teach or inform, but to indoctrinate people into a very specific right-wing ideology, one which ultimately argues for a white Christian ethno-state. And because this sort of indoctrination is happening all over the place, today I'm going to look at this specific class so we can get some insight into how educational content is being used as a propaganda machine. Many of the ideas presented in this course were inaccurate, misinformed, or willfully misleading, but the thing that I found most shocking were the parts that I kind of agreed with.
At its core, socialism represents a very humane ideal. It's a system that is driven not by a desire to brutalize people, but to give them a good life.
But then they do stuff like this and imply that Marxists invented being trans.
The first transgender operation was conducted around 1930 in Germany in an institute run by cultural Marxists there.
And listen, that'd honestly be cool, but I looked into the institute they're talking about. It was notably attacked by the Nazis, where they burned all the books. I don't know if you want to be on the same team as the Nazis. And the only connection I could find with Marx was that the Marxist writer Ernst Bloch once rented a room there. So there you go. And this isn't a mistake. The contradictions and inconsistencies of the course gave me some shocking insight into how reactionary thinking works. And what's maybe more shocking is that, like I said before, the whole thing ends with a call for white Christian nationalism.
And here you could look at, say, Federalist 2, where John Jay describes that you have a common people. They are rooted from a common ethnicity, use a common language, have the same religion.
Okay, so let me show you the course. There's 6 lessons, each with a final quiz, and you get a certificate if you complete everything, which I did. So now I'm a graduate of this course. Before we get into it, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, Magic Spoon. As I've been getting older, I'm trying to get healthier, and a big part of that is cutting down on sugar, which I know leaves me feeling sluggish and not at my top performance, which is why I'm really excited to tell you about Magic Spoon. Now, you've probably already heard about and tried their really fantastic cereals, but today I want to highlight a couple of their newer goodies, their treats and their granola. Now, their new treats are crunchy, airy, and make for the ideal snack on the go. They contain 11 to 12 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and 1 to 2 grams of net carbs. And their brand new high protein granola contains 13 grams of protein and 0 added sugar, and delicious flavors like honey almond and peanut butter. Now, my favorite of these is the treats. I spend a lot of time sitting down, staring at a computer. It's easy to forget to eat, and knowing that I have a simple and high quality snack that's ready to go feels so good, especially because there's so many flavors I get to try. Now, if you want to check out all this awesome new stuff from Magic Spoon, you can use the code Wisecrack or click the link in the description to try Magic Spoon treats or granola today and get $5 off. You can also find Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their products that it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee online. So if you don't like it for any reason, they're going to refund your money. No questions asked. So click the link in the description to go to magicspoon.com/wisecrack or scan the QR code on the screen. You're going to get $5 off. Now let's get back to the show. Now, the first lesson is called The Journalist, Marx, and it opens with the question,
how does a society create and protect human flourishing?
Which they apply to Marx's theory of communism.
The claim that communism leads inexorably to human flourishing must be evaluated.
But soon after this, they make a claim that points to the specter that's haunting the whole course.
The dream itself, complete abolition of human self-interest, is completely at odds with human nature.
But see, the problem is they don't define human nature, which then means that they can't evaluate Marx's ideas against this definition. Again, a definition that doesn't exist. Am I most charitable? I guess I would assume that their definition of human nature is some libertarian notion in which we're all private entities driven by our own self-interest. The course also teaches us that Marx and Engels' ideas were more vibes than they were facts.
They thought these are not simply our views or our passionately held beliefs, although they were, but these are scientific truths we're talking about.
So basically, when Marx does philosophy and economics, it's just like emotions and opinions. But when these guys, the ones teaching the course, do it, well, then we're doing facts and logic. And when they do try a more substantial critique, it honestly feels like a lazy misreading.
Marx's idea was freedom requires us to liberate ourselves from our own individuality and to see ourselves in terms of the larger community that we are part of. And that communal freedom, which is a kind of collective freedom, it requires what we would call today the abolition of private liberty.
Now here he's trying to be cute by rephrasing the abolition of private property as the abolition of private liberty. The implication is that Marx wants us to give up our individual freedom and ourselves for communal freedom. But as Marx himself writes in the German ideology, only in community with others has each individual the means of cultivating his gifts in all directions. Only in the community, therefore, is personal freedom possible. Now, the reason that Marx can think about both freedom and dependence is because he is a dialectical thinker, which is something that this course never mentions.
Freedom means freedom from religion. We have to abolish religion itself in order for there to be true freedom. And that can only take place in terms of this radical transformation of the human condition in which we stop thinking ourselves as individuals and start thinking of ourselves as part of this other larger whole.
Now, I've talked about this a lot in the last couple of years, but Marx's critique of religion is really a critique of the underlying conditions of oppression and alienation that lead folks to seek hope in religion. You know, this is the opiate of the masses stuff. Marx isn't saying that religion is bad. Marx is saying that the world is bad. The world is soulless, and it leads to the need for religion. And his vibe is like, guys, what if the world was just great and we didn't need that? What if the conditions of social and economic life were such that you didn't have to go to church to feel good? You still go to church if you want, but you wouldn't have to. That's the idea here. Now, another thing I've talked about before is how Marx's thought is dialectical. And this describes when thoughts and concepts develop through internal or external contradictions. Thinking dialectically means that we don't just think about concepts or ideas like they're in a vacuum, isolated from everything else. You know, we think about the relations between seemingly opposed concepts or ideas. And this makes thought way more active and makes concepts way more active because we're thinking about them in relationship to context, material conditions, historical conditions, things of that nature. But this course ignores the possibility that you could be both more dependent and more free. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you live in a country that makes you pay more in taxes, but then also gives you the freedom of healthcare as a human right. So in a sense, you might feel less free in that you're paying more in taxes, but you are more free in so much as you are guaranteed healthcare. So this means that if you break your leg when you're skiing, well, you know that you're not going to have your life financially ruined because of medical bills. You have the freedom to go skiing, knowing that even if you screw your leg up, you'll be okay. That's why I never want to go skiing. It's just too high of a risk. You know that skiing is like the #1 source of injuries for recreational sport activities? I'm just saying, skiing's too dangerous. Now, in the course notes, they write that because religion and the family had both been perverted by capitalism, Marx believed they needed to be eradicated to reach a true communist society. And they somehow interpret this stuff, especially the family part, from this passage.
Abolition of the family. Even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital.
So a team of distinguished academics read that and they thought, yep, they think that the family absolutely should be abolished. But according to political scientist Heather Brown, Marx and Engels argued that the family in its bourgeois form, based primarily on the management and transfer of property, was in a state of dissolution. The material conditions that had led to this form of the family were disappearing among the proletarians because they had no property to give to their children. And here it's basically saying that the family in bourgeois society really just amounted to a mechanism of wealth and property transfer. And in acting as if Marx wants to destroy the family out of some hatred of tradition or God, the professors teaching the course are distracting from the fact that Marx and Engels want to abolish the family as a means of wealth transfer, labor production, and the subjugation of women. In effect here, they're talking about what the family was at this particular moment in time. And this is another instance of the course really failing to understand Marx's dialectical method, in which concepts are developed dynamically in light of existing social relationships. This leads them to miss the fact that Marx is not talking about the textbook or dictionary definition of family, but instead family as it existed as a social category during the particular time period of the Industrial Revolution in Europe. And this failure, well, it plagues the entire course because they ignore the fact that via this method, things written in 1848 wouldn't uncritically apply to our situation in 2025. Again, if we're thinking dialectically, concepts, ideas, all of these things are related to historical, material, and economic conditions. Our historical, material, and economic conditions now are different than they were 200 years ago, but the course doesn't seem to acknowledge that. Now, they end the Marx lesson with this.
Generally speaking, the doctrines have had the most appeal to university students, college students, the comfortable, the well-off, those who really have the time to read and, of course, to process and then propagate these ideas on their own.
This comes after a big chunk of the video where they argue that Marx was wrong because the working class didn't agree with him. And when they talk about the working class, they seem to just mean like, soot-faced mine workers who don't have time for reading books and stuff. But they're missing the point here because for Marx, working class describes people who do not have access to capital and then exchange their labor for money. People that go to do a job, and then when you do the job, you get money for the job that you do, right? For example, most teachers, nurses, chefs, journalists, plumbers, and YouTubers are working class. Most people are working class. If you're watching this video right now, you're probably working class. And if you're not, I would love to tell you about our Patreon community. There's a link to it in the description. It's a great way to support the channel. When you sign up, you're gonna get videos early with no ads, access to our Discord community, a bunch of other perks. It's a great thing to do with your inherited wealth. So consider that. It's a way that you can pay for your sins. And I'm really not sure why they're saying that it's bad that the people who agree with Marx are people who read his books. It's like saying, only people who have actually eaten al pastor tacos think they're good, so they're bad. What? Doesn't make sense. And this implies that first, people who actually engage with these ideas take them seriously and find them valuable. And second, that labor conditions are such that many working people don't even have time to read, which seems like a problem. Now, I took the quiz at the end of this one, and it created a real dialectical tension between my desire to get an A and my desire to be correct. But for now, I want to jump ahead to the final lesson, but I don't want you to feel lost. So here's a quick summary of lessons 2 through 5. Lesson 2 teaches us that Lenin was bad, and since he read Marx, well, Marx was bad too. Lesson 3 teaches us that Stalin was bad, and since he read Marx, you guessed it, Marx was bad too. Lesson 4 teaches us that gulags are bad, and that some guys who built gulags read Marx, so Marx is bad too, but also there's an Austrian economist who donated his library to Hillsdale College. He said Marx is bad, but he's good. Lesson 5 teaches us that Mao was bad, and since Mao read Marx, Marx was bad too, which brings us to lesson 6, which teaches us that public school teachers, corporate DEI consultants, and Bernie Sanders want to destroy Western civilization and make you do orgies.
What Marx really deep down wanted the most was the complete destruction of Western civilization.
If you've ever done an orgy, let us know in the comments. The logical leaps made here are pretty astonishing. They're going from Marx to Lenin to Stalin to Mao to college professors, DEI programs, trans people.
But what seemed to have happened is that all of the Marxians, they did not just wither away and die. They, in fact, fled to academia. And in academia, they continued to spread these ideas and refine these ideas.
Of course, academics don't spread Marxist ideas as a project of ideological warfare. And again, I used to be a philosophy professor who taught at a very left-leaning department. I taught courses on Marxism, and that's just not what we did. The idea is to introduce students to texts and ideas that are important and let them think about them for themselves. Academics study these ideas because they're important to the history of political philosophy and relevant to contemporary crises. But this course is invested in constructing a conspiratorial narrative in which everything bad is somehow connected to Marx.
Critical theory becomes the dominant political philosophy of the latter half of the 20th century.
And as you see in the final lesson, they're really drawing some very thin connections. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, critical theory refers to the work of those from the Frankfurt Institute of Social Research in pre-war Germany. Later, a bunch of these people moved to America. It's associated with thinkers like Adorno, Horkheimer, Marcuse. And the basic deal there is they were blending Marx's work with the work of Freud and other contemporary culture analysts. Okay, probably read some of the stuff. But to say that these theories being taught in university humanities classes made it the dominant political theory of the latter half of the 20th century is a bit rich. And this is the part that really blows my mind. There's no solid evidence that the ideas of the Frankfurt School critical theorists were the most important political theory of the latter half of the 20th century. Guys, the latter half of the 20th century is like Reagan and Thatcher. That's the vibe we had. The vibe was not Adorno and Horkheimer, if only. And the course only really focuses on some of the more sexuality-based theories from these writers, and they read it in a way that tries to convince you that post-war Marxism was all about gangbangs and sexual transgressions and stuff like that.
And it was Marcuse that argues for a white privileged elite, the white radicals, to unite in solidarity with what he called the wretched of the earth. And by that, he meant third world peoples of color. He meant women who were oppressed by a patriarchal system, and he advocated those who were oppressed by gender. He advocates polymorphous perversity to overthrow the old social mores.
It's not. I've read a lot of Marx, and I've never had sex. They then connect the dots between Marxism, critical theory, and American liberalism.
The most influential form of Marxism today, it's just what we call today liberalism.
And then they slowly bring in the Christianity stuff.
It provides a sense of meaning and purpose to the children of the upper middle class and of the wealthy. But ultimately it falls hollow. There's no real transcendence there because the very promise of Marxism is a thoroughly profane society, that you'll be free from all the repressive moral constraints. Well, what does that lead to in practice? It leads to thorough meaninglessness, or it is reduced to raw power.
And there's a point in lesson 6, I'm going to show it to you right now, that honestly had me thinking that maybe I was watching a course created by serious academics. I actually tried to get in touch with Kevin Slack, the professor who's talking right here, but he doesn't have an email address listed on his faculty profile, so I couldn't do it. Kevin, if you're watching, DM me or something.
The reason I think that Marxism is so appealing is because of the radical inequalities of wealth that are, to me, indisputable today. How is it that you can defend mere capitalism if it leads to the destruction of the family because we open up a market for every form of degradation that helps to destroy the family?
But right after he acknowledges that Marxism is a legitimate response to the crises of capitalism, there's this hard pivot towards the founding fathers and their sort of veiled Christian nationalism.
People descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, attached to the same principles of government. Very similar in their manners and customs.
Right? And it feels, once you get here, like this is where the whole thing has been leading. To have a truly free nation, well, you need people with the same ancestors, presumably European, speaking the same language, probably English, practicing the same religion, Christianity, probably Protestantism, along with similar manners and customs, which I guess means they wear the same types of pants and eat the same sort of food. It all boils down to, and I'm not exaggerating here, a white Christian ethno-state.
Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people.
They think that the basis of a nation is everyone has to be from the same place, speak the same language, and have the same religion. Oh, there's a place that's like that right now. Things aren't going well there. I'm not going to say what it is. Also, it's like no wonder these guys were so mad at Stalin because, Stalin helped defeat someone who was also trying to create their ideal white Christian ethno-state in Germany. It boils down to this. America only works if everyone in the country is both moral and religious. Got it.
The irony for all these socialists is that the goals that they're trying to achieve can't actually be achieved through liberty, through simple economic and political freedom.
And again, that's their response to the entire tradition of Marxism and critical theory. It's wrong and bad because it doesn't say that America is a place where everyone has the same religion and morality. God, I don't know. Like, if it all boils down to that, why have the whole class leading up to it? You know what I mean? Like, why have the whole thing? To suck time away from me. You guys know I have a child. I watched her running around the room playing as I had my headphones on and I watched this course and took notes on it. You know, I'll never have that time back. I do it for you. Or, as I might argue, the irony here is that socialism, at least as articulated by Marx and those in the Marxist tradition, is about creating the conditions for freedom and human flourishing outside of the constraints of private economic markets. But more seriously, offering freedom to markets and people alike is precisely the problem for those in the Marxist tradition.
Socialism is always fundamentally the negation of liberty.
Because when we do, markets often end up being more free than people. And I'll give you guys a really clear example here. I'm in Los Angeles right now. We're still in the middle of some historic wildfires. And the thing that's happened in the wake of people losing their entire lives is that real estate agents in Los Angeles are jacking up rents, like a lot. This has been in the papers and stuff. Because what they're basically doing is taking advantage of a free market to jack up the rents because they know right now people that just lost their houses are incredibly desperate and will pay anything for a place for their families to live. That's what we're getting when we have a free market. You know, it's the freedom to be economically exploited after your house burns down in an ecological disaster. Sounds great. And this all boils down to this, right? That socialism, which is a theory that they never really formally define or critique in this course, is antithetical to liberty, which again is an idea that they don't formally explain or define, which really means that these dudes, they just want to scaremonger you into thinking that any system other than a Christian, capitalist, European, libertarian thing is inevitably going to lead to you having to go to the gulags. And what really bums me out here is that free, open educational content, which I think is good, is being used to push a very specific and right-wing propaganda without really paying any attention to the scholarship or the figures being discussed. That's it for this one. Please do leave a comment and let me know what you think about all of this. I'd love to read those things. If you're a member of the ruling class, please consider signing up for our Patreon. There's a link in the description. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have enough free time in your working week to do some reading. You know, you deserve it. In the meantime, take it easy. I'll see you later.